My guest today is from the civilrightscoalition.com. He is also the owner of Cape Gunworks, Toby Leary. Welcome back to normal.
Thank you for having me on, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. This is an interesting topic. You know, I like the topics where we can maybe go deeper, more than the headlines and the issues that are in the newspaper and of the day. And this has been a long-standing one here in Massachusetts. And a little bit of story. I'm gonna tell you. You don't know this. Nobody knows this. How I got involved in politics. It was in the late 2010, 2002 aughts, 08, 09, something like that. And I was listening to the Sean Hannity radio show. And Sean brought up some point, about how, what people voted for versus what was actually being put in place. And I called in. I managed to get in. I was the last caller of the hour or of the day. And I said, Sean, I get your point, but I live in Massachusetts. Go, super liberal. And I said, yep, it is. If they had the choice to, they would vote to take my Second Amendment rights away. And I proved a point to Sean that he didn't want to hear necessarily, but now it's coming to fruition. And I say that because we have these inalienable rights, and they're there for a reason. First Amendment, Second Amendment, all first 10 through the Bill of Rights. The Founding Fathers were very smart. And the people, if given the opportunity in Massachusetts, would opt to take away those rights if we allowed a pure democracy to take place. So gentlemen like yourself serve a very good purpose in our Commonwealth, that are there on the front lines day in and day out, defending what I believe is an important right. So first of all, thank you. That's a long-winded way of saying thank you.
My pleasure. Happy to do it.
So tell me about yourself. Tell me about Cape Gunworks. Tell me about the Civil Rights Coalition, and where people can, and why you're here.
Sure. Yeah, no, everything you said resonates with me. I became a gun owner at 18. I went down and applied for my license to carry literally on my 18th birthday. I already had the class done, my check for $100 filled out, and I went down to the Dennis Police Department, submitted it all, and they're checking my license, checking the date, going, oh, he's here on his birthday. We got a live one here, and so they weren't too happy that I was there applying, but whatever. And I remember the whole process. Something seems so wrong about, this is what I have to do to exercise a right that is unalienable or unalienable, untransferable, unencumberable, whatever adjective you want to use there. And I'm like, man, I got to jump through quite a few hoops to exercise this right. I don't have to do this to go to church. I don't have to do this to vote. I don't have to do this to, fill in the blank. And I remember thinking, there's something wrong here. There's something broken, seriously broken. And you're right. They are absolutely interested in taking that right away.
So let's establish that up front.
Sure.
Right. I think that's a given. Okay. If people like yourself, or even in my case, who have a microphone in front of them and have a voice, if we went quiet or stopped standing up for this, it would be gone.
Yeah.
And the only thing protecting us right now is federal judicial decisions, the Constitution, yes, but federal decisions judicial decisions that have reinforced what we all know to be the case,
right?
Which you were shocked at 18.
Yeah. And at the time when I became a gun owner, which, by the way, it took 6 months to get my license.
Yeah.
That's not, I make the claim nowadays that rights delayed are rights denied. And this is treated in Massachusetts in actuality as a privilege, not a right.
Right.
You get your driver's license a whole lot quicker, and that's a privilege. Everyone agrees, or whatever. I still believe it a right, but regardless. So fast forward to 2025, the Democrat National Convention in Springfield last September, on page 5, they have a proclamation that says the Second Amendment should be revised for meaningful and strong gun control.
Right.
That's literally verbatim of what it says in their actual party platform documents on their website right now.
Yeah.
You can go there and see that they hate the Second Amendment so much that they put it in their official party platform they want it revised for meaningful and strong gun control measures.
Let me ask you a question, because we have the opportunity to go a little bit deep into these topics. I think I have two reasons that don't conflict with each other of why they want this to take place. What do you think? Why? What? That's pretty clear language. They want to take away everybody's guns.
I have two reasons as well.
Okay, go for it.
One is the well-intentioned, well-meaning, emotionally involved person who may or may not even had a tragedy with a firearm, a negative outcome with a firearm, knows somebody who had a negative outcome with a firearm, and they get emotionally invested in it and say, if it weren't for the gun, so-and-so would still be alive. So-and-so would still be here. But it's a very shallow intellectual argument because evil exists, right? And the gun is the tool. If somebody's hell-bent on killing you, they're going to find a way.
Well, this is important because our whole judicial system, our legal system, is based on the individual committing the act, right? It's written in the laws. Right. It's not the inanimate object.
Yeah.
It is the person doing the crime. And that never reconciles. You're right. I think that there is, so your first reason is similar to mine, okay? There is an emotional response to this. And we live in a scary place, okay? I mean, we live in a wonderful world, but at the same time, the world can be a scary place. There's bad people. There's evil in the world. And people that will do other people harm. And you could feel helpless. Right? You can feel helpless in that kind of situation. So how does the mind cope with that? Well, let's exercise control over the things we can control, and it's just those gun owners.
Right.
And we're going to make a law, and we're going to make everybody safe, and we're going to take away their guns, the legal guns. And you go, well, you say that criminals don't obey the law. You can make all the laws you want. We have laws against murder. We have laws against shooting your firearm in too crowded a public place or whatever. Those laws are not obeyed.
Right. And I would argue that it's an intellectually dishonest point because you're not willing to apply the same logic to any other aspect of life. In other words, every time someone dies in an automobile accident, you would say, how many more, Mr. Speaker? We need to ban automobiles and make sure that nobody can drive because 55,000 people die on American roadways every year in automobile accidents. But nobody makes that intellectual argument because it's not smart. It's a dumb position to take. Everybody understands the usefulness. Everybody understands the need. Everybody understands, the benefit of cars in society. Where we have, and I say we as a civil rights kind of pro-gun rights group or fractured entity over the past 30, 40 years, where we have not been willing to engage in this area of ideas, is to show the absurdity of that argument and say, and push back and say, no, you know what? There is a benefit to society. Number one, for the same reason this country exists, which was to literally started over gun control. The shot heard around the world was the Tories going to take the powder from the colonists. They were literally going to seize the magazines and the powder stores and the armories. Yeah. And so the people said, no. This is what keeps us free from tyranny raising and rearing its ugly head. I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. But that is the reason, not necessarily just to put food on the table as a hunting, endeavor, or even the big benefit, which is to be able to protect your family against
no,
evil
you're
that
right.
arises.
The obvious one is like self-defense,
Yeah.
right? So you say, well, anybody defending their home, but single women living alone, a guy who's 250 pounds kicks in the door. What are you going to do?
Right.
Okay, they can even excuse that away. But you're right. The main reason is against tyranny.
Yeah.
And then you get into the silliness of it. Well, they don't have, you don't have drones and you don't have this. It's like, that's not the point.
Right.
That's not the point. You're eventually going to need, two human beings are facing off, and it's more, maybe they have automatic weapons instead of semi-automatic weapons like we have, and there's differences, but hey, it's more of a leveling playing field than you being unarmed. And I think for me, what solidified this absolutely was what I saw the left and the Democratic Party was willing to do over COVID.
Yeah.
What the rights that they were willing to strip away. What I saw take place in Australia, in China, all over the place. It just reinforced and reemphasized why the Second Amendment is so important. And the petty little bureaucrats, the power-hungry people who want to control everybody else's lives, and they know the one thing standing in their way is that people will literally fight back if it gets too far. I don't think we're anywhere close to that now. People, sometimes on the fringes of our society, we hear people talking about civil war. That movie that came out last year, I'm like, I didn't even want to watch it. I'm like, I don't want that. No. I don't even want that. And we're well far away from that, even though everybody talks about how divided we are. It's like, look back in history at the actual American Civil War. We're nowhere close.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I don't trust the other side at all.
So that brings us to my second point of why they're doing what they do.
Yeah.
And this is much more nefarious. This is not, everybody jokes a lot of times on social media in the comments section of videos I post of how dumb these gun grabbers are, because they're literally choosing the most inefficient way to solve a problem. In other words, if you have a problem with crime, controlling the people who aren't responsible for the crime is not an efficient way of fixing that problem. But they use the preying on the emotion to do this, right? Yes. Every time there's a tragedy or a negative outcome with a firearm. And going back to my first point of, actually, I should just close the loop on that, the big benefit to society besides tyranny and self-defense. And, well, I guess self-defense is a big part of it, but hunting, sporting, collecting, history, the whole 9 yards. If you boil it down and break it down, there's literally like 30-odd thousand deaths a year with firearms, right? Mm-hmm. Half of which are suicides, maybe even more than half now. And then out of the 15,000 remaining, that includes self-defense shootings, that includes police shootings, that includes murder, that includes accidental death, that includes the whole ball of wax, right? So that 15,000. If you look at how many times a year somebody uses a firearm to prevent a crime, the FBI statistics are in the millions. It's 1.5 to 3 to, on average, 1.5 to 2.5 million times a year that somebody has a defensive gun use 90+% of the time without a shot being fired. Mm-hmm. And everybody gets to go home. Yeah. And, the bad guy gets to go home to their family. The good guy gets to go home to their family because of the presence of the firearm in that situation.
Correct.
So if you're just using basic, math, you would say, what's the greater number, 30,000 or 3 million? Yeah. 3 million people solving a problem with a firearm is a lot more than the 30,000 negative outcomes with a firearm. And out of those 30,000, not all of them are negative outcomes. A lot of them are good, positive outcomes in that they put an evil person down before they could have caused more.
Or they defended their family or their property.
Yeah. And then, so that brings us to the more nefarious thing where the people who are making gun laws, if you look at it on surface value or surface level, you would say they're not very smart because they're, again, taking this very inefficient path to solve a problem. But the problem is they are a lot smarter than that. They know that what they're doing has nothing to do with keeping you safe.
Right.
It has everything to do with controlling you.
Correct.
Because they have intentions for you that you would not go along with if you were able to stand up against it.
That's an excellent point. And we caught that glimpse.
We did.
Over COVID.
And you saw it, you brought up Australia. There was no better place than Australia to showcase mass gun control, confiscation, and taking guns away from the population. And less than 2 generations later, they are putting you in camps and saying if you come off the porch of that camp, it's a $5,500 fine for the first offense.
Yeah.
You know,
and then you're going to a different kind of camp,
right,
with bars on it.
Right.
So, no, I agree with everything you've said, and this is what we have to guard against, because we are governed by the petty little tyrannies right now. And we have this with people, the environmental activists who don't want you to own a single family home, or you can't, put us in boxes and copycat buildings and densely take away your car. But you mentioned driving earlier and getting your driver's license. Do not even get it confused if the audience is watching. They want to take that away too. Right. And not even because of like environment. You could drive an electric car. They just don't want you to drive. Why? Because they want you on a train, walking and cycling and living in a box that's stacked 15 stories high.
Yeah.
And again, there's not a logic to it. They just want that control because they can get away with it. And the ultimate stopper is your right to defend yourself. And at some point way down the road, if it continues to go that way, you can say, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And so your second point is like, first point and second point, I think we're very much aligned in what those two main reasons are of why people are against this and want to strip gun rights from the citizenry. It's control.
Yeah.
It's control. So I want to get into the specifics of what your organization is doing and what we have coming up politically. All right. So that would be Chapter 135. Yep. Okay, so let's get into what is Chapter 135, and explain that for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it's a very big topic because it was an omnibus gun bill in Massachusetts of the Acts of 2024 is what it was, Chapter 135 of the Acts of 2024, and basically it rewrote every aspect of firearm ownership in the state of Massachusetts, and none of it increased freedom and made it so good people aren't paying a heavy price for deciding to exercise a God-given right. Yeah. And on the other side of the coin, there is no action taken towards the most violent criminal element of the Massachusetts citizenry that
sorry, I'm going to take a little tangent here because you brought something, you touched on it before. We'll get back to Chapter 135 in 1 second that I saw online, and I want to mention this. Like, there is this mindset in the Democratic Party on the left that if you arrest the criminals out there, that crime won't go down, that somehow putting them in jail and putting the people that are doing it will somehow be replaced by this other group of people that'll slide in and start doing crime now. It's bonkers. No, if there's the people who are committing the crimes in our society, murders, robberies, drug dealing, what have you, there's a limited number of them. When they go to jail, they're off the streets. Crime goes down. It is a binary situation. You're not going to have, there's a crime gap, somebody's going to fill it. That's not the way it works. And you're right. The wrong-headed mindset that too many in elected office hold is part of the reasons why we're seeing our cities and our towns start to erode from a safety standpoint.
But again, that it comes back to my second point about why is This is not by accident. These people are literally nefarious actors because they need the chaos. They need the crime. They need the unrest. They need the instability to continue the propaganda of why you should be willing to...
Why the legal gun owner.
Legal gun owner should be willing to surrender some of their rights. And I would say, it's inefficient. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. And also, it is akin to saying, we want to lower drunk driving incidents on our roadways. So therefore, we're going to make it harder for sober drivers to get a license, buy a car, and buy a car. Yeah. That would be the equivalent of what we're talking about. And everyone would look at that and go, that's ridiculous. Why would you ever do that? Mm-hmm. But that is exactly what the ruling class of Massachusetts is doing in all of their wisdom. And they're telling you the whole time, don't believe your lying eyes and ears. Yeah. This is to make you safer.
So related to exactly that, what specifically is in Chapter 135 that you were touching on before?
Well, one of them is licensing. Licensing currently is about a 4-hour class. You're required to take a government-mandated class before you can even apply to get your license to exercise a right.
I remember, well, so 2005, like after Katrina, I was living in the city. I got my license, and I remember I had to go for the class, and I had to go out to the islands. This was 20 years ago.
Island,
Moon Island, and take it and make sure I hit the targets properly.
Get a certain.
I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good shot. So yeah. But, okay, so you have to take the class, which is right. You have to take the class to exercise your constitutional rights.
Yeah. So you take the government-mandated class, you pay a fee for that, and then you get your certificate, and then you go down to the local police department, and you subject yourself to a background check to be fingerprinted, photographed, have your name added to the Department of Criminal Justice Information Services database, which is the same database that keeps track of criminals and the prison system in Massachusetts. So that was one of the things that just set off alarm bells when I was 18. I'm like, why am I in the same database as criminals? But I digress. And then once you've done that, you pay another fee to the licensing authority, the local police department. But some towns require an interview. You got to sit down and tell the chief.
Really?
Yep. Some towns, you got to sit down and tell the chief. Now, number one, you got to schedule an appointment. You can't just do it, walk in and sit down with him. You got to schedule an appointment with either the chief or his designee and give him a reason why you want to exercise your right to keep and bear arms.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. Mm-hmm. That's unconstitutional.
100%. And the Bruin ruling said so.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, there's a little bit to chew on there. Mm-hmm. The Bruin ruling. Elaborate for the audience. What exactly did that tell? Because it came out a few years ago, and it really, what you would think, settled it, right? At least settled it for a while, but not according to Massachusetts or New York. But continue.
So the Bruin ruling was New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, which was the Attorney General of New York. In New York City, there was a may issue licensing regime, very similar to Massachusetts, which you had to give a reason. You had to show good cause why you needed a gun to defend yourself. And if you couldn't show that you were being, followed home by the team of assassins, they would say, sorry, you're not getting your license.
Well, right? they would normally reserve it if you were carrying cash or valuables, like home from the store or something that after that. And they didn't even want to give it to those people, really. They just didn't want to give it out at all. So they put all those roadblocks up in front. Right. But
And Massachusetts was also a may issue licensing regime. So in other words, you had to sit down, give a reason why. Yeah. You had to give references, and you had to meet this suitability standard that was very arbitrary, that any police chief could say, I don't like the address of where you live. I don't like your roommate. I've had to come out to that house before for a domestic, for something unrelated to anything you're doing, whatever the situation was. Or maybe you got pulled over and had an interaction with police and they didn't like how that went down. He could arbitrarily say, not giving you the license. I know people it happened to, many people.
Right.
And that was the case. So it came before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, and this is amazing to me, but if you think about Supreme Court precedent regarding the Second Amendment, you can count on two hands how many cases since our nation has come into existence that has happened, probably less than, maybe even one hand, but from 1930s, the Miller case, until 2008, the Heller case, there was nothing in between. There was no Supreme Court ruling from 1930s until 2008, which is amazing. This is a foundational issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be more. I mean, the way it's been interpreted, I mean, people just owned guns,
right,
for much of that time. So there wasn't like the inching towards clawing back that right. So that you're right. I think what is a culmination, Heller in 08, of, was that DC, right?
Yeah.
So District of Columbia, and people going like, no. So, I mean, all those court cases finally made their way through the system by that point into the past few years. So I guess we can count ourselves lucky that it took that long to put it in place, but it's still in place in a lot of places. And continue with what you're talking about for Bruen.
So then in 2015, we had McDonald out of Chicago, and then fast forward, really the next big Supreme Court ruling was Bruen. There was also Caetano, a Massachusetts case that came out, a few years before that and after the McDonald case, and that was regarding stun guns. And that was a per curiam decision, which means they didn't, do the whole oral arguments and have the whole thing go all the way through, the case go all the way through to completion, where there was a vote and a dissent and a majority opinion written.
Yeah, they just kind of ruled on it.
It was basically they sent up, and the reason is because Justice Scalia passed away in the middle of it. He was going to be writing the majority opinion. Yeah. So they ended up using his language in a per curiam decision, but it was actually the right way to do it, I guess. But they basically smacked Massachusetts on the butt and said, you can't ban an arm that is in common and ordinary use for lawful purposes. Mm-hmm. And that is what the Heller ruling did, and then McDonald reaffirmed it. And then Bruen...
Because Heller was about like the pistol in D.C.
Pistol. Right? It was an outright ban on pistols in D.C. And ironically, Massachusetts had a ballot question in 1974 to ban handguns outright.
Yeah.
And that's what formed Gun Owners Action League in Massachusetts, was to oppose that ballot committee question. And it ended up, it did get defeated. But regardless... fast forward to the Bruen decision in 2022, June of 2022, it came out, and it looked back at the Heller decision and reaffirmed it as good law and good precedent, and went a step further and gave the instruction to the courts, because after Heller, it should have been done. But the problem is we didn't get the paint by number instructions handed down to the inferior courts on how to deal with gun cases. So now it was still the wild, wild west. If you're in the First Circuit like we are, that uphold the government interest or the tiers of scrutiny approach, like this two-step approach, which Clarence Thomas finally nipped in the bud in the Bruen decision and said, it's one step too many. You can't look at this through the lens of government interest balancing approach, because government wants this, therefore it's good for the people. It has to be done based on the plain text of the Second Amendment. And if there's no provision for the restriction in the plain text, then the burden shifts to government. And government has to prove that there is a historical analogous law from the founding era that is... that supports the modern law.
Yeah, and this is why people, when we talk about Supreme Court decisions and you talk about being an originalist, it's really crucial that people understand they meant what they meant. That's why they wrote it down. Mm-hmm. Okay, and for all of the things going on in our government right now, this is why we pass laws and have the legislature vote on them. President, governor signs them into law, and they're written down.
Yeah.
It's real important. The words mean what they mean. You know, they're not reinterpreting. It's not a living document. Scalia was really good on that. As like, no, it's a dead document. It means what it means, and it has to say what it says. You know, because if you want to get rid of guns, they've doing this end run constantly around the rights. I respect the people at least that are like, no, repeal the Second Amendment.
Right.
Okay, I don't agree with you, but at least I respect it. You're not lying to my face and telling me what you think is good for me. Like, no, I don't like guns. They're going to ban them. Let's get rid of the Second Amendment. Okay, well then, at least we know where we stand. Go through the process.
Yeah.
Change the Constitution.
Ironically, I agree with you there, but ironically, those same people are usually the first to scream when there's government overreach, and they just gave government a monopoly on violence.
Right.
You know, in theory anyway.
But isn't that the great irony of all these people that they're talking about? Like the same people that talk about everybody's a fascist and authoritarian. It's like you're the group that wants to give the government more power over our lives. Does that not? Do those synapses not fire for you? And they can never reconcile it. And at least folks that are on our side of the aisle or agree, more conservative, originalist, constitutionalist principles, we're consistent. Mm-hmm. You may not like some of the things. You may want more welfare. You may want to repeal the Second Amendment. You may want a whole host of things. But we're consistent. We're consistent, and it's scary because now that because of their inconsistency and their hypocrisy, they're willing to do things that are not, a part of the process. So back to Bruin and 135.
Yeah. So Chapter 135 came about as a Bruin response bill. In other words, this is happening throughout the country in these blue states that are having a tantrum. That's the best way to describe it, of this Bruin decision. They realize the writing on the wall is all gun control now will crumble ultimately if compared in the light of that standard that Bruin reestablished from Heller. Yep. Text, history, and tradition. Under the text, history, and tradition paradigm or approach that Bruin outlaid is the only way you can uphold gun control, they realize their days are numbered. It's a house of cards that's going to come down because there is no analogous laws from 1791 that are similar to what we have today.
So what specifically is in 135 that goes against what Bruin decided and basically reaffirmed again that people have a Second Amendment right to own a firearm?
We could talk for hours on 135. It's basically the highlights are licensing is going from the paradigm I just outlaid.
From the May issue to...
It's a shall issue now, but there's extra steps. You got to do an 8-hour class, including live fire, and suitability, which is one of the big things that Bruin knocked out. You can't have anything other than you're a prohibited person, therefore you aren't getting a license. That is the only qualifier that Bruin put on.
Okay.
Is if you are a prohibited person, you don't get a gun, period. And Massachusetts said, oh, wait a minute. No, there's this suitability thing that we're going to cling to. And the First Circuit upheld it, which is crazy under the Marquis and Donnell case from a year or so ago. So they've really clung to that. So that's one. Licensing. Then they redefined all rifles to basically, if it's a semi-automatic rifle with a detachable magazine, it is now an assault-style firearm.
So other than bolt action, single fire, everything else falls under that. Yeah.
If it has one or two features, and one of the features, believe it or not, is a hand guard to keep your hand from being burned from the barrel when you're firing it.
Now they've done this before. This is the same. All right, so. Okay, keep going.
Handguards have been in existence since the 1400s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is nothing new. So that's one of the evil features to make it. So everything, it's funny, right after 135 passed, I got a call from, I think it was Reuters or the BBC or someone, and I was giving an interview, and they're like, but this is about gun safety. I said, there's nothing in this bill that's safe, makes it safer to shoot. They want to take out an adjustable stock, which makes it more comfortable to get to the right length to shoot it. They want to take out a pistol grip that makes it so I can exhibit more control over the gun. They want to take out the barrel shroud that makes it so my hand doesn't get burned. And anything that improves the rate of fire, like a good trigger, is
this is childish emotional responses. Somehow in their brains, they think, well, if it's brown and it doesn't have the pistol grip, it harkens back to an age of 1872 and cowboys with the bolt action rifle, and then it's not as scary as the black gun that has multiple, has a magazine in it and comes out of a modern day movie, right? I mean, this is it. Yeah. It's just emotional appeal. What they see, what they're used to, what they think might do. And by the way, even if they got this, and even if everybody said, "Oh, well, okay, we'll relent," they'd be after the brown bolt action in 2 seconds. I mean, nobody should even be confused for a second of what their real goal is on this. So, all right, so the cosmetic features of the weapon, the licensing feature, the licensing structure going from 4 hours to 8 hours, and then the suitability.
Yeah,
and then what else?
Well, under the licensing thing, there was already a various amount of curriculums that mass instructors like myself can teach. Those are all going away. Now it's going to be a curriculum written by the Mass State Police, and once this goes into effect, it'll, which should be in April sometime, it'll mean there's no certified instructors to teach this in Massachusetts because they haven't been knighted by the Mass State Police with the new curriculum and what they have to teach and everything else. So, and I find that incredibly ironic because, once this passed, we'll get back to this, but it's important in this discussion. We gathered signatures to repeal it, blah, blah, blah. The whole Civil Rights Coalition was formed. And once we had enough signatures to repeal this bill, Maura Healey stepped in and signed an emergency preamble to get the repeal effort suspended, or the suspension effort.
This is real important,
yeah.
Right here. Okay, so let's focus on this for a minute, because you had the signatures to repeal the law. Now, not for a ballot petition to get on the law, right?
Well, it was a twofold thing.
Yeah,
it was to get on the ballot and the law suspended up until Election Day.
Okay.
So, in other words, it wouldn't go into effect until the voters had a chance to vote on it. Yeah. And once it became apparent, at first they mocked us, said, like, good luck with the signatures, pal. Yeah. We needed 35,000 signatures to get on the ballot, and we needed 50,000 to get the law suspended. And we got over 100,000.
Yeah.
And but once it became apparent we were going to succeed, Maura Healey stepped in 71 days after the fact and signed a emergency preamble to the bill to short circuit our suspension effort,
which is unconstitutional on its face,
unprecedented. I don't think it's ever been done, and to do it retroactively, and not to mention, she has to meet 4 conditions. It has to be for the peace, the health, safety, and the convenience of the public.
Yeah,
and she did this for the convenience of government. That's it.
Yeah.
And it was purely a political move, and I believe she violated her oath of office to do it, but that's neither here nor there at this point. And the reason I say all that is as soon as they did that, it meant that the new licensing regime had to be in effect. So Executive Office of Public Safety punted for 18 months and said, well, we don't have the curriculum written, so just keep doing the old one. And we'll honor that until the new one is written. Now, think about that as far as I'm concerned. This is now law.
So you're no, you're right. I see where you're going.
Yeah.
You're technically breaking the law.
Correct.
Acting in accordance with what the law was, but you're not given any written provision or leeway from it because the law is a law. She wrote the emergency provision, but nothing was set up yet.
Well, I think it's just in other words, government can give themselves the leeway, but you and I aren't going to get leeway
No.
if we violate Chapter 135.
Well, let me ask you a question, a little side step here. Well, there's two things. One, I want to get into how we're going to handle this because there's sort of like a two-pronged approach. But after Bruin, it should have and did like reestablish that you have a Second Amendment right to carry and possess and own a firearm. Yet, and I think it was across state lines too, right? Something like my license in Massachusetts would move. No,
unfortunately, not. That's it. It is obvious because of full faith and credit, and because of even look at the Jim Crow era laws when after slavery was abolished, there was Supreme Court precedent, Dred Scott decision, for instance, which said that if freed slaves are treated as the people, then they will be able to keep arms and travel throughout the country.
Right.
That was a fear that they had, as racist as that is, that anyone who's a freed slave could keep and bear arms throughout the country. So it was a known thing that you could have a gun and you could travel. Have gun will travel, right?
Yeah.
And that was the way it was for so many years. And it wasn't until these licensing regimes started to pop up where they erected barriers at state lines that now they don't recognize constitutionally enumerated rights for certain individuals as they cross state lines. This is unprecedented. Like it would be like when you go to New Hampshire and you want to go to church, they'd say, no, I'm sorry, you're from Massachusetts. We don't recognize your right to go to church in New Hampshire. Yeah. But they did that with the Second Amendment, and unfortunately, that is still the way we're living in now. There's 29 states that have what's known as either constitutional carry or permitless carry. Yeah. And they recognize it from a constitutional level, and you don't need any permit, and they recognize you from whatever state you are. As long as you're not a prohibited person, you can carry a gun in 29 different states.
By the way, I'll differ from some of my conservative friends, and like if you are a prohibited person, I don't think you should have the right to that. I'm not getting into that debate with anybody.
No, we all think there's people we know that shouldn't have a gun, right? Yeah. I'm not afraid to say that.
Yeah. All right. So this gets down to like what to do next, because my fear, I look at these situations and it's like after Heller, after Bruin. I remember when Heller came out and I was like, yup, you can carry a pistol in the city and do what you want. And no, they just throw another barrier on it. Mm-hmm. And I guess New York City is the prime example, because it's like you can't carry a handgun in New York City. But if you're a legal gun owner from another state and you have a pistol, you should be able to go across the George Washington Bridge into Manhattan and be fine. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is if a cop wanted to stop you there, they could lock you up. And still, you would still just be illegal. They just do it anyway. Yeah. We're in this really weird space legally for several topics, but this one in particular where it's like the Supreme Court decision is clear, crystal clear. And blue states are just like, nah, not really.
Well, Massachusetts is ground zero.
Yeah.
Like literally there's a U.S. Air Force veteran who moved here from Arizona. Mm-hmm. He was in the state less than 48 hours back in, I guess it was July. And he was out with his fiance. They were doing DoorDash deliveries to fund their move from Arizona to Mass or New Hampshire, wherever they were going to end up. And they were 20 minutes from the New Hampshire border, and they got pulled over, realized there was a problem with the registration. So the police were going to tow the vehicle. They said, take everything out of the car and he's got everything he owns in the vehicle, including all his firearms and everything else. So the police see the guns and they say, you have a license to carry? He goes, a what? I'm from Arizona, a what? So they arrest him for unlicensed possession of a firearm and hold him under the dangerousness statute without bail for 4 months. He did 125 days behind bars until finally they let the dangerousness statute, which they can keep you for 120 days under the dangerousness statute. They just ran out the clock on that.
Yeah.
And that is has affected his, every aspect of his life. Not to mention a violation of not just his Second Amendment, but his First Amendment, his Fourth Amendment, his Fifth Amendment, and his Eighth Amendment. That
clearly violated his civil rights.
Yeah, cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah.
I mean, to say that because he had guns, that makes him dangerous, that's insane. Yeah. He was not in the act of robbing a bank. He was out trying to earn money to survive. No. And the state law under Chapter 135 says if you move here, you have 45 days to apply for a license to carry. Does that mean you have to, apply from jail?
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But yet this state put him in jail, a honorably discharged Air Force veteran who has a CDL license in Arizona, which still means something because they actually do a background check. Yeah. And he was here with guns he legally and lawfully possessed. He passed the background check, filled out the 4473, the whole 9 yards, and they treated him worse than the most career criminal. Then we have a gentleman in Falmouth right now whose license expired, and the state, in concert with the feds and the state police, and under the direction of Andrea Campbell, conducted a sting on him and had a SWAT van with 8 SWAT people behind his truck as he's going to the store to buy some steaks for dinner.
Yeah.
And they arrest him, and he has been on house arrest with an ankle bracelet for almost 2 years. He's never got his day in court. Yeah. So the process is the punishment.
Yeah.
This guy hasn't even been able to go to trial yet because the people who arrested him won't show up. Yeah. How do you not, and under American jurisprudence, we have a right to confront our accuser. Mm-hmm. You have a right to a speedy trial. You have a right to not have cruel and unusual punishment. But under the dangerousness statute, they're keeping him under lock and key. He was in the commission of no crime, total victimless crime of allowing his license to expire.
Right.
That is insane. Because now this right is treated like a privilege, as I said.
Right.
And if you read Chapter 140, Section 131, this is the Mass General Law, it says right in the first paragraph that this license shall entitle the holder thereof to buy, sell, own, trade, ammo, guns, magazines. So they're actually putting in Mass General Law.
Entitles
a license.
Entitles a word.
It's not a right.
Yeah.
And Article 17 of the Mass State Constitution, which goes back to 1780, says the right of the people to keep and bear arms for the common defense.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to say how standing armies are not something we want, right. But here we are.
So, okay. Your ballot petition to repeal 135, is that good to go for November?
Yes, we're on the ballot.
All right.
Yep.
So I'll put on, the audience, go to the civilrightscoalition.com for more information on that. And people should, if they want to contribute to that, it's going to need advertising. If you want to volunteer for it, help get the vote out for that. That's coming in November. It's a critical issue. And, hopefully enough of the voters will come to know about it, realize it, and vote for it. Mm-hmm. My concern, Toby, and this is like based on everything we've been talking about before, is like they repeal it, meh.
Like 72% who voted for the
audit. When people vote for it, it passes, and it's still not taking place. I want everybody to wake up. The only way this changes is if you vote out these left-wing Democrats and vote for Republicans. The only way, the only way is if these people are voted out of power and they cannot do the things that they are doing. Mm-hmm. That's it.
I agree.
That's it. And I say this is like, oh, well, some things aren't political and some things are bipartisan. It's like bullshit. Okay, there's one side doing this. Mm-hmm. If you want that side gone, people have to vote that way. If you want lower taxes, if you want more energy, if you want better housing regulations so that we can build homes, if you want to start a business here, it's one side doing it and one side that is in favor of making your life better and one side making your life worse. enough.
Yeah.
You know, and look, you're on a political show. I'll call you a semi-political guy. I'm a political guy, right? So but that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Because this is my fear now. This is happening all over the place. We have an audit that passed.
Right.
No.
Well,
we repeal 135, which I think I'll do everything I can to help that happen. Say it happens. Nah.
Right.
What do I just don't know what to do at that point.
Well, that's a great question. I do.
The Bruin decision passes. We're going to pass another law. It boggles my mind.
Right. There's a difference, I think. I think you're right. I like to bootstrap this issue to the audit issue because I believe, number one, I'm sad that firearms or the right to keep and bear arms is a political football, but it is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it shouldn't be. But I read, or I quoted to you what the official Democratic Party platform is. We also had our ballot initiative or a ballot question endorsed by the Republican state committee.
Yeah, that recently happened.
Yeah, that just recently happened, that they support the repeal. The good news is I am starting to see a lot of left-leaning, left-of-center Democrats and independents say, you know what? This really does go too far. This doesn't affect the criminal. It affects me if I choose to own a gun. And they might get there by a different methodology than I might get there, which is fine. But the fact that the Second Amendment is for all Americans and all civil rights should be defended the same way.
Yep.
And the fact that there is one political party that, you know, is on the wrong side of history for that is tragic. Yeah. But I will say this. Our ballot question is decoupled from a political party. It's decoupled from a candidate. And so many times I have seen people in Massachusetts that are left-leaning, that are pro-Second Amendment say, sorry, I just can't vote for the pro-2A guy because then I get all the stuff that I don't agree with along with it, the baggage along with that. Yeah. Whereas this is a pure question. Do you believe in the right to keep and bear arms? Yes or no? If you do, vote against this, vote no. If you don't, go back to the guy who says, let's repeal it, right?
Well, yeah, at least that was honest. I mean, there is a diminishing amount of people who on the left. There used to be, they used to be your liberal people who just liked high taxes, welfare, big government, but they went, no, you know, because they sort of knew and they didn't really trust government too much. Mm-hmm. So they was like, no, I like the Second Amendment. We're going to keep that just in case. It's like, okay, well, on that we'll agree. Mm-hmm. But those numbers are shrinking, and it's unfortunate. But it's good to hear. But it's good to hear that that's coming back. maybe they're having the fantasies about Civil War Part 2 with whatever they think about Trump or something like that, and that's maybe some, you know, who knows? But
that's probably what it is. But like I said, they get there by different.
But if they get there, they get there. Even if they, you know, hopefully not acting on it or anything like that. But I think they're starting to realize that hopefully that the Constitution is a really important document that they should start to learn more about and not just take everything be spoon-fed what they are from left-wing talking points.
Right. So you asked the question, what do we do about it? Two things here. One is Madison wrote in Federalist 49 that the people are the true fountain of power. We are the true fountain of power. Power doesn't reside in the hands of government. It resides in the hearts of people. And we have kind of forgot that in Massachusetts. And I would say we suffer from Stockholm syndrome to a certain extent. We're used to playing ball with our masters, and they tell us when we eat, when we go to the bathroom, the whole 9 yards, and we say yes, and we get very fond of our captors. But really, the truth of the matter is we are the true fountain of power. And on the other side of that same coin, government cannot do what they did. In other words, they can't erode your constitutional rights that aren't granted by them. So that's really the irony here, is they are forbidden from eroding your rights in any right. And they did it anyway. They violated their oath of office to do it. I believe they violated their oath of office to even propose it.
When people, some people mistakenly think that government is, the federal government specifically, is there to take care of them. and that's not the case. The
Right.
government exists, our government exists to protect your rights.
Yeah.
Protect your rights. That's why it's there. And we've had these Supreme Court decisions. We have the Constitution, the Second Amendment. It's been reinforced, and people in Massachusetts legislature want to take that away.
Yeah.
So the federal government has said, no, you can't do that.
Right.
And it's very important that everybody acknowledges that, respects it, understands it, and votes accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, the Federalist 49 says, out of the three branches of government, the legislature is the most important branch of government because they come from the people, the blood, the relatives, the community of the people. And they are there for one purpose, to be the and I quote, the confidential guardians of the people's rights. And meanwhile, up on Beacon Hill, they have become the oath breaker. Instead of the gatekeeper, they are the oath breaker. They broke and now they are the very thing that our founders feared the most. People who would operate outside of their constitutional limits of power. And, you know, a lot of the founders even talked about it. They said they will trample on the parchment barriers. So they've trampled on their powers. It's a true definition of dereliction of duty or abuse of power, really, I think is the best description of it. And if we don't do something about it, then we get what we deserve, right? Yeah. And here's an opportunity for us to repeal this and tell government, no, you've gone way over the line. And number two, if we pass this and they refuse to act on it, we have a mandate at that point that says, you know what? A, it's unconstitutional. Madison v. Marbury, 1803 says anything repugnant to the Constitution is void.
Well, so Toby, this is what it comes down to for me. As far as I'm like, 135 is unconstitutional already, right? I mean, it would take years to make it through the court system, but say we circumvent it, and not even circumvent it, but no, we vote it down, get rid of it. What is the other opportunity if they go, nah? We'll wait for the Supreme Court. And like New York, or if the Supreme Court says, no, 135's got to go. You can't do that either.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now we're going to do another thing because they're going to. Like, what? Like I said, I made my plug about it. The only way to get this is just vote these people that are doing it out.
Yep.
So, well, hopefully we're successful in doing that. But what do you said you had a second option for?
Well, at that point, it's what Thomas Jefferson called nullification. Yeah. You refuse to comply. It's what our colonists did to the Stamp Act. The hated Stamp Act was they said, that's funny. We're not going to comply. Yeah. And you ever see the YouTube video, How to Start a Movement, where the one dude dancing on the hill, he's kind of dancing kind of silly. He looks really silly when he's dancing all by himself. And unfortunately, that's how this government treats the person who stands up to them. The guy who lets his license expires, he ends up going to jail. Yeah. But when 2 or 3 people join that guy, and all of a sudden everybody on that hillside end up joining the guy, and they're all dancing on the hill. Now, guess what? Government can't do a thing. Yeah. Because there's 600,000 of us all dancing to our own tune and
don't comply to the law.
Saying, you know what? This is repugnant to the Constitution, which is the supreme document. The First Circuit Court of Appeals needs to get in line with the Constitution and Supreme Court precedent. And we have a mandate. There's another scenario that could play out. I don't like to think about it, but we lose. Like, let's say the people vote away their rights this November. Yeah. That is unconstitutional as well. You cannot vote away your constitutionally enumerated rights.
Well, this is what my political start on the Sean Hannity show. That's the exact same thing. Yeah. If people wanted to take away my rights to the Second Amendment in Massachusetts, they very well would. A majority would.
They would. Yeah. And they might try. But the truth of the matter is,
not.
The truth of the matter is they can't. Yeah. Because they're not the giver of rights, and nor is the legislature. Our declaration says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their creator. With certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How do you have life if you can't defend it? How do you have liberty if you can't defend it? And how do you pursue happiness if there's tyrannical government telling you what you can and can't do? The point I'm trying to make is the legislature didn't give the right in the first place, nor did the people. Therefore, they can't take it away. So there's only one way the vote can go that's constitutional, and that is to repeal this horrible law that basically infringes and encumbers a God-given right.
The website is the civilrightscoalition.com. Go to it. Tell your friends. Vote to repeal 135 in November. It is super, super important that we do. Just to reiterate that we do live in a constitutional republic with inalienable rights. I'm putting in my plug because what I said still holds. We need to vote people out that are doing this and keep people in that are not. Go to the QR code on the screen, donate to the Republican Party today, because there's one party doing this and one party not. Go to I'll go to the link on the screen, scan the QR code, donate. We need your support. We got to get people elected. That's how it all works, whether you want to think that it doesn't or not. Thank you, Toby. I appreciate you coming on. This has been a great conversation, one I was excited to have when I invited you on, and I really hope you're successful with the repeal and successful in, because it's going to come around again. Unfortunately, we might have this conversation in a few years from now with something else, but if you're successful, it'll be a lot harder for them to do it. So
all rights are worth defending.
Absolutely. And with that, thank you for watching Back to Normal, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.